expert à la FAO pour sa conférence sur les expériences dans le développement laitier en Afghanistan.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here in this very wet part of France. When I look out the window, I see plenty of grass, so I'm happy. Good for cows, good for milk production. I'd like to start by, first of all, thanking the meeting organisers who very kindly invited FAO to come to this event, and particularly highlight that one of the reasons we were interested, as the President of Agro-food has just mentioned, is because this is a little bit different as an event, and particularly the aspect of the role of women and the increasing awareness, and we hope also future investments in the role of women is something that FAO shares with, in terms of vision with you as well. So very briefly, my name is Tony Bennett. I'm based in FAO in Rome. I've been working for FAO and for other international organisations, consulting companies in the area of livestock products and specifically dairy for about the last 20 years. I used to run the dairy farm, so I know a little bit about animal or milk production as well. Today we're going to have a little bit of a look at an experience which we had in Afghanistan. It's not a typical situation, it's a very difficult country, and security or insecurity is one of the major concerns. So briefly, we'll just have a look at what FAO is, what we do, some of our approaches within dairy industry development, because there are many. We're then going to have a look a little bit at the context of Afghanistan specifically. I have a short video. I'll break the presentation to show you. And then probably, to me, the most important part is to look at the results, what has been achieved, and then to draw from that some of the key lessons and what could be used in other countries and other programs, in other industries, in terms of lessons learned, and finally some of our more recent work in this area. So FAO was founded in 1946. It's an intergovernmental agency, so our members are governments. We have 194 member countries, plus the European Union, plus 2 associate members, if I remember correctly. So it's basically a global organization. What do we do? We have a new Director General, I think for just over 1 year and a half now, Graziano da Silva. We have 5 key priority areas we'd like to improve our impact. Those are particularly focused on food security, making food production more productive and sustainable, to reduce poverty, and the part which I'm more involved in is number 4 here, is to enable inclusive and efficient agricultural and food systems. And that basically means that we're trying to have more benefits accruing to the people who participate in agricultural value chains. Finally, to increase resilience, very often when there is a crisis or an emergency, there's an immediate emotional or political response, but we want to build the capacity of communities, of countries, to be able to withstand those as well. So, why is FAO interested in dairy? We're interested in dairy because dairying is very unique. It's not like anything else in agriculture, and particularly not like crop agriculture, which provides returns of perhaps once a year, maybe twice a year, if you're lucky, 3 times a year. Dairying provides modest, because we're focused on small and medium scale producers, but it provides very regular income, and regular income, and particularly cash income, changes lives. The second part, and related to food security, is primarily at household level. Dairy, milk is a food. We don't keep animals, we don't keep cows for fun, for looking at. We keep them, particularly in developing countries, for producing food. These are for feeding families. That's the fundamental difference between many other kinds of activities as well. An important point and with the increasing urbanization at a global level, which we sometimes tend to forget, is that dairy represents also an opportunity of transfer of income from normally more affluent urban areas going into more rural areas. A very important point for us in terms of the future and sustainability, and particularly with the economic situation in many countries in the world, is job creation and sustainability. And dairy can and does provide substantial both on and off-farm jobs. And these are sustainable jobs. These are not jobs which are lasting for a few weeks. They last for often decades. And the more important point for us in terms of this symposium, and I'll give you some figures from some of our experiences, is that particularly dairy benefits women. And I'm a man, so I don't have to apologise. I can very clearly say that in many programs which we've seen, women make better decisions and often are better at handling dairy enterprises than men are. And perhaps it's a direct relation between also the fact that children are fed in 99 point whatever the statistic is, 99.9 times per hour perhaps, by the woman of the household. The woman makes the decision, and very often when it's her children, she makes the best choice. So again, that's something which is quite different with other agricultural commodities. Summing up all of that, and again, a little bit coming back to the core issue of the symposium, there are two parts about dairy which we feel are critically important, and we can sum them up, perhaps simplistically, but essentially nutrition, health, and wealth. So what's our approach? We talk about a principle of inclusiveness. Now, what does that mean? That essentially means that small and medium producers, transporters, traders, middlemen are not always bad people, and processors, and also those involved at the retail level, can not only be involved, but need to be involved in programs which are building a sustainable local industry. And again, our focus is on small and medium scale industries. That has significant implications in terms of income, also in food security. We work as an intergovernmental organisation, we work with governments, but also we work in every program that we do with either academia in terms of developing national capacity and or with the private sector, the local private sector, which often is a little bit overlooked in some programs. Investing in national capacity development is one of our core roles to ensure that there is sustainability. So we work with national authorities, we work with national training institutions, we work with regional organisations, and we work with global and local partners. We also work in terms of developing and improving the quality and safety of milk and dairy products. Codex Alimentarius, I think most of you will know, but also an increasing array of sometimes complicated private standards, organic standards, etc. There are many different aspects to that work. One of the ways perhaps which we're a little unique in terms of our position and our role is that we work very often at the public-private interface. So increasingly our role is about bringing different people together at different levels, many of whom have been working in a subsector or an industry for some time, but may not have a facility which could bring them together to have a more open and transparent dialogue. So this is a very important part of our work. And increasingly, I think as the previous speakers have mentioned, there's a huge growth in demand for milk and dairy products globally. The forecasts are for that to continue for at least the next 5 years, likely longer. So there are many opportunities here. Many of our governments see this, and they've asked us to help them increasingly in designing for them, not only at the policy level, but also a national strategy level for moving forward so that they can benefit from that. So today we're going to look at the case of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is in the news, maybe not every day, but every second day, because of the insecurity. It's a complicated country. It's very mountainous. It's surrounded by many other countries. I think its major export is an illicit drug, which is sent all over the world. So it's not known as a dairy country. But in fact, in many areas, like in many countries, in the river valleys where they have good agricultural production, dairy is and has been a strong part of their culture. So briefly, the population is about 30 million people. About 85% of the country is mountainous. Estimated imports in the region of 50 million a year. An important part here is to realise we're not talking about large farms, we're talking about very modest, very small farms. So typically 0 to 5 cows, actually the average is more towards 2. And hectares per family will be in the region of 0 to 2. Daily production for an animal, depending on the level of nutrition, crossbreeding, etc., many different factors, is about 1 to 3 litres a day. And we started working there in around 2002. Now, if you allow me, I'm going to show you a little video, because I shouldn't talk too much. A picture or a video is probably worth a million words. Can everyone hear some music in the background?
خیلی هم خوبه. هفته شیرو می‌بردیم یک دور بیستیم، سال پیاز بیستیم. باز سگل خریدیم، اما رفتیم سگل. بیستی شیر رایی کنیم تو بیشه. بیستی شیر رایی کنیم. دیگه چند بیشتر میشه دیگه. حسابی خوب ندار کن که چند بیشه. پایسا.
The dairy sector in Afghanistan is thriving. Thousands of small farmers are benefiting from an FAO project that is improving the collection, processing, and marketing of their milk. Women control almost 90% of the profits.
شیرشان پاک شده سابق که بود در وقتی که شیر بیاوردن موقع شیر پا یا چپلی یا خاشه یا همون درمای شیر از یا سطلای شیر از اینا نامنظم و نادرست و احساسایی درستی نداشت و لحاظ شیر از اینا پاک صفا میاره مقدار شیر از اینا پاک.
The milk is transported to a modern processing plant built by the project.
When the starting of the FAO Day program, they bring to train the technical staff in the dairy field. The processing plant of the NR Dairy Union, they have the facility to processing 5,000 liters milk per day. They can process milk, pasteurized yogurt, and cream, cheese, also buttermilk.
Milk producers are organized into cooperatives. The representatives vote on management issues. Everyone shares in the profits and plans future growth.
The original project of FAO in 2003 started with 1 or 2 provinces. Now this program is extended to 7 provinces of Afghanistan. Average farmer increased the milk production from 4 liters to 12 liters. Now is also demand for the dairy product is increased this country. Based on that, the project should be extended up to national level. We hope, inshallah.
Okay, that's just to give you an on-the-ground view of what has happened, what is happening. I think you can see there's some quite significant benefits accruing. Sorry. So the approach which was taken, as was mentioned, was to form producers' communities into cooperatives, enterprises at the level of unions, secondary and tertiary level. So the total amount of beneficiaries is around 50,000, and that's going to expand substantially in the next 3 to 4 years. So very simply put, this is the kind of a system where you have you have a system here where the milk is being produced, and again the women have an important role. It's mainly women who do the milking. The milk is then brought typically to a local collection centre, often by the children as you saw on their way to school. It's tested in terms of quality, just basic compositional testing. And then the core part of this, which makes the whole system work, is that there is a processing plant which produces products which are designed for the local market. No use doing all of this, of course, unless you get some cash for the family for doing the investment and for doing the business. So just briefly having a look, because you couldn't see so much of the animals, and it's important we see the local situation. The animals often kept in reasonably poor conditions. Families do have a huge value on their cows, as was mentioned I think also in the case of India. 1 or 2 cows makes a difference to people's lives. The role of women in Afghanistan is critically, and I would say fundamentally important, but it's very difficult. I was going there for 4 years before I was able to talk to a woman. 4 years. Now we have increasingly, and it took quite a lot of time, we have women trainers who also have technical skills who are able to access and improve the lives of these women. So women have a role in the milking, also in the marketing, and this is a point which I'll come back to just perhaps later, but it was mentioned to an external evaluation of this program that previous to this kind of an intervention, the traditional system was that the woman would try and sell the milk by sitting at the side of the road, and with the security situation, etc., that posed quite a lot of risk. So instead of doing that, now the women can bring the milk directly, or the children can bring the milk directly to a small collection centre located within their own village. So that risk is now removed, and that makes, for the families, a big difference as well. In the past, women were also involved in very, very labour-intensive basic processing, making local type products such as yogurt and fermented milk. That was often shared with the neighbours, and there was no cash income. The last two, I think, are probably the most important, because we'll see a figure, but the decision on the cash, what is done with the cash, and the control of the cash, and this is perhaps unique within this situation, or maybe not so unique, is between 87 and 90%. So let's say 90% of the milk money goes to and is controlled by the woman of the house. The product mix in Afghanistan is mainly yogurt, it's about 70%, some pasteurized milk, paneer, butter, and buttermilk. You can see the milk here, which is being sold in the half-litre sachets. New jobs, just to give you some figures, would be somewhere around 256. And these jobs, I can say, are sustainable, because I was in Afghanistan last year, and I went to visit some of these facilities, these enterprises, which are running independently for the last 4 years. The manager has a new office with new furniture, all funded from their own milk. And the decision to buy the furniture was taken internally themselves. Business is very good. They have a design capacity of 5,000. They're actually operating at the peak season now well over 7,000. Incomes, and this is a critical part for the households, incomes in many cases doubled, and in some cases even tripled. And in a country like Afghanistan, that makes a huge difference in life. It's not only milk, and we have a more detailed analysis, I don't want to go into too much detail, but also even for the offspring, the calves which are produced, the manure which is produced, and the labour. One example which was interesting I saw myself is that in one area the manure is actually being used as a fuel for cooking, rather than going an hour and a half walk to collect firewood and bring it back to the house. And again, this is a direct and very significant benefit for the woman of the house. And finally, food security, because it's not only about milk, but when a woman has cash, she makes decisions, and she has the power and authority to also improve the diversity of the nutritional, of the food basket and the nutrients therein. And again, just to highlight, 87% of the milk money going to and controlled by the women. We did a small survey on this. It was intended to be a small survey. It became a survey of 500 households, and we said, well, what do you do with the money? And the uses were education, food, and medicine. And we've been told, and again it would require a much more in-depth survey, but particularly that girls of the household are now able to go to school who previously may not have been able to go to school. So again, major changes on the ground. This is just one example because we asked some people, well, give us your personal story. This lady is sick, her mother is sick. She takes care of the cow and she gets the money from the milk. And because of this money, unlike the past, now she's able to go to school. She called the project, in her words, her happy chance. Maybe her only chance. So some of the lessons learned, and these lessons I've drawn specifically from this intervention. And this is an intervention, as I said, which went, when I took it over in 2006, up to 2010, but we still have ongoing engagement. The key points, which maybe you'll use in future considerations, and this is why we want to share with you, is that particularly at the level of how do you, some people call entry point, but how do you make sure this is going to work? And one of the points we felt was the engagement with the local communities. And this is something which takes time, it takes effort, it's complicated, and it means you need to also be very aware of the social, religious and cultural norms within the country as well. The second part is that, and very clearly, and I'm happy to underscore this here, is that dairy means new and sustainable jobs, it means cash income and sustainable local institutions. Sustainable local institutions is a nice phrase, but when you ask at the village level to give me some detail, what does that mean? It really means that they have local, not only the village shura, which is the village committee, but they also have now an enterprise which makes money and gives the money back to the community. So the community have a very active role and benefit, and this is what we talk about inclusion within these kind of programs. Let's not forget that many times when the dairy industry starts, because this really is, it's modest, it's starting, it's not huge industrial fact, people learn that they can do business, and people learn they can make money. So when you give this motivation and return, people learn very fast. So very often we see, and we encourage as well very much, that there can be some diversification into other food processing or other businesses which can provide returns and specific benefits for those communities. A major benefit of this is the benefits for women. I talk about a little bit about the risks, the security risks, the safety, also about less work and drudgery. And we have a study ongoing at the moment trying to put a value on this as well. It's not easy because someone would say, well, if the woman doesn't spend 3 hours producing a different kind of milk product, she could be doing something else. Or she may be doing nothing, or she could be looking after her children. So we're working on that at the moment. But primarily the key thing here I want to share with you is about the 87% of the milk money going. We feel that putting investments in local capacity development is also a very wise decision. And too often in the past there have been short-term interventions, and perhaps this is where livestock and livestock industries are a little different to other industries, that livestock investments require building often at local level substantial capacity, and that requires resources. When you want to look at maximizing those resources, putting in some measure of value addition, and in fact also you could argue the case of reducing the losses of the food, can also have a significant cash impact on your bottom line. And as I said, with the capacity can come some of these other opportunities. So based on that, on diversification, one of the dairy plants last year, so 2 years after we finished our support, independently themselves decided, and they've gone in, as you can see, to a very profitable water business. So this is just one example of them taking their initiative, and I think getting quite significant benefits from that. So I've tried to draw from this, but also enriched with some of our other experiences, some good practices, which maybe we can discuss. I think we have a very rich program ahead of us, and I think there's a lot of other experiences we'd be happy to share and learn from everyone else and share some of our experiences. Inclusiveness for us is one of the guiding principles in trying to ensure sustainable small and medium scale dairy industry. The gender and the social perspective is fundamental, but also perhaps the socio-cultural perspective. Dairying, as I said, in agriculture is unique, regular cash coming. If you have good value addition or good level of value addition, and you can provide some quality technical support to the initial investments, these enterprises will run on their own sustainably in the future. And then I mentioned about a longer or medium to long-term engagement with the local capacity. Now, when I talk about local capacity, I'm not just talking about running a training course in one specific thing. I'm talking about developing people's capacity in terms of processing, marketing, doing business. So enterprise development, and that can only be done sustainably when it's with the local private sector. And finally, also, we mentioned a little bit about the diversification and opportunities which that can present. Specifically for Afghanistan, we started that program, or we finished our involvement, or almost finished our involvement in 2010. We have one program ongoing. And more recently, based on the success of those interventions, the government of Afghanistan themselves have actually now put, the last figure I think was 10.5 million, in partnership with the International Fund for Agricultural Development, into upscaling and replicating this kind of an approach in some of the regions in Afghanistan. We're going to be implementing it, not myself directly, but some of my colleagues. And also one of the points that we found in Afghanistan is that there are a lot of people who, both in Afghanistan and outside, who are willing and interested in making some investments. So those are some of the points for the future, which we're quite optimistic will continue despite the difficult situation. So I can't leave unless I do also a little bit of marketing. So I'm going to just very quickly, there's some, the cover page is outside. This is the latest FAO publication, which a little bit rounds up what I've talked about today. And this is on milk and dairy products in human nutrition. It provides, I think, some insights into the more scientific, the nutritional, and also some experiences in dairy industry and development programs. I think it's a very useful source for information. It's, as usual, because FAO is a public organisation, it's available free of charge on the internet. Hopefully tomorrow we can have some hard copies also available here outside. So it'll be on a first come, first served basis. But we found that this was also a very interesting joint work which we did with other colleagues, because we sometimes tend to focus too much on just milk, but actually we're talking about food. And food really translates into nutrition, because it's about feeding people and feeding people for the future. Thank you.